I hate when any game goes defunct, and the first sign of that is often the loss of multiplayer functionality for most of these titles. And the article begins as follows. Game servers for two much-loved games recently shut down, destroying millions of user-created levels. Why did this happen, and is there anything you can do about it? I don't like the idea of paying for a game or service just to have access to it revoked because it's too old, especially when there are third-party solutions that don't depend on the developer to keep the game up and running. Hello fellow travelers and welcome to the Hard Light Network. So the long-term fans of this channel know that I've got a real tender spot for when games go dark. I hate when any game goes defunct, and the first sign of that is often the loss of multiplayer functionality for most of these titles. When it comes to the overwhelming majority of modern games, especially those developed for current generation consoles, the online requirements are actually a bigger hindrance than they are a help in most cases. Sure, you get easy access to updates, leaderboards, and the other social elements of the game, but ultimately, when you tie a game to its online functionality, that puts a time limit on the playability of that title. We're going to get into that further, but before we do, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I've got coming up for you guys in the future. Also, take to the comment section down below and let me know if this has ever happened to a game that you've enjoyed playing. You guys' support is invaluable to this channel, and every little bit helps spread these videos through the algorithm to reach other gamers just like you. But with that being said, let's get into this video. And of course, today's article comes to us from MSN.com and is entitled, Game Servers Are Fleeting, But Should You Care? And the article begins as follows. Game servers for two much-loved games recently shut down, destroying millions of user-created levels. Why did this happen, and is there anything you can do about it? A game server is a specialized computer that provides gaming services over the internet. They are mainly used for two purposes: to share data among several players, enabling multiplayer games, and to provide games that can be played via the cloud rather than a local copy. Game servers have many benefits, but their drawback is that you need them to keep playing. Problems, from hardware failures to network issues, can cause servers to become temporarily unavailable, and that means no gameplay. Worse, servers can be shut down permanently if their owners don't see enough value in keeping them running. This happened in April of 2024, with two much-loved platforming games losing their user-generated levels. Game servers that hosted player-made levels for both Super Mario Maker for the Wii U and 3DS, and Little Big Planet 3 for the PlayStation 3 and 4 were closed forever. Some of the biggest and most recognizable multiplayer games run on servers, including Minecraft, Fortnite, PUBG Battlegrounds, and Among Us. What's more, many of these games let you create or use private servers, either for local multiplayer gameplay or simply as an alternative to the official servers. You can make your own Minecraft server if you want to restrict players to a small group of friends. But not every game offers self-hosted servers as an alternative. In particular, games that encourage players to upload and share their own content are usually restricted to official servers. Such games include Mario Maker and Little Big Planet. Console publishers are often more protective of their IP. Nintendo, in particular, is fiercely protective of its games, locking them down to prevent anything but official sanctioned access. Long-running game servers are few and far between. Although Furcadia's servers have been up and running for 30 years, the majority of very popular server-backed games have only been around for the last decade or so, and are still running with large customer bases. Fortnite servers have been running for 7 years now, and there's no sign of the game being shuttered anytime soon. The original Minecraft Bedrock Edition server has been up since 2013. Meanwhile, the Wii U Super Mario Maker server lasted for just under 9 years. Sony's Little Big Planet 3 lasted for almost 10 years, although its servers were plagued by problems resulting from hacks and mods. The Overwatch 1 servers lasted just 6 years, and the game is now officially dead. But that decision was simply to make way for the game's sequel. Generally, a game server stays up for at least as long as a console's generation. Publishers could argue that anything beyond this is a sign of goodwill. Typically, when game servers shut down, that means no more multiplayer. Games with multiplayer at their core may, in effect, cease to exist, while others simply lose a big part of their functionality. Servers sometimes shut down gradually, as was the case with Super Mario Maker. The game released in September of 2015, with Phase 1 of its shutdown, no more courses could be uploaded, taking place in March of 2021. However, player levels that had been uploaded by then remained playable for a further 3 years until they could no longer be played in April of 2024. Gamers broadly accepted this as the consequence of massive online multiplayer gaming, with many online games, especially battle royale types like PUBG and Fortnite, reaching their 10-year anniversary soon. We may see some high-profile shutdowns and resulting outcry. A smaller group of players is concerned about game preservation. Once servers are gone, they often remove access to beloved games. Not even emulation can save the day, unless enterprising developers can find a way of using alternative servers. And that right there is the major reason why we're creating this video for you guys today. Maintaining multiplayer functionality is a massive part of games preservation. And sure, while it's true that in the cases of games with a single player element, most of them remain functional after the multiplayer shuts down, we can't underestimate the effect that it has on the culture surrounding a game whenever it loses its multiplayer functionality. Personally, there are two games in particular that come to mind when talking about multiplayer servers and their shutdown. The first of which is Far Cry 3, whose servers actually shut down in 2022. The servers for this game were open for around a decade, and while I'm thankful for the time that we got to spend on them, recently I've gone back and introduced my wife to the Far Cry series, and unfortunately we were unable to play the multiplayer segments together. And while there are of course other titles that we can play together, Far Cry 3 was one of those formative titles that I think is critical for all gamers to play, and missing the multiplayer functionality takes a big chunk of that game away. Thankfully, there still is an amazing offline single-player campaign for players to enjoy. The other game that springs to mind is actually Tomb Raider 2013, and while the multiplayer elements are still functional, the online servers are basically dead. And while I know that that has more to do with a lack of an active player base, it's still worrisome to know that any day now, the multiplayer servers could shut down. At this point, the multiplayer servers have been open for almost 12 years, and I'm super thankful for the length of time that they have been. And I also know that the multiplayer functionality wasn't exactly the most popular part of that experience, but I still enjoy playing it to this day with my wife and my friends. I don't know what it is exactly, but there's something about the janky, stilted gameplay of the multiplayer experience that is still so charming. And honestly, if I had the capacity, even in a limited sense, to run my own server, I definitely would, just for a few more games with the homies. But as mentioned in the article, it's not just these less popular or older titles that are at risk. Like the article mentioned, there's a subset of the player base, as well as the publishers themselves, who pretty much view it as a sign of goodwill to keep these multiplayer servers up and running, since it does cost them money to do so. But that line of reasoning doesn't sit well with me, just like it doesn't for the licensing argument. I don't like the idea of paying for a game or service just to have access to it revoked because it's too old. Especially when there are third-party solutions that don't depend on the developer to keep the game up and running. It's an argument that I've raised in some of my previous videos about the licensing issue, but there are third-party applications that allow you to set up servers for you to play defunct games on. For instance, I've personally utilized the third-party application Game Ranger to set up temporary servers to run multiplayer games of Fallout Tactics, a game that is 24 years old. Like I've said before, it's important for us as customers to push back against this mentality that these digital titles have an expiration date. And sure, maybe it falls to the fan base to shoulder a little more of the burden and maintain these titles, but with services like Game Ranger and GOG, it's never been easier. But that is going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much to everyone who has watched up to this point. And if you can, do me a solid and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I've got coming up for you in the future. Also, hit that comment section down below and give me your thoughts. Have there ever been any titles that you've lost access to the multiplayer that you personally would like to see restored? Have you yourself ever utilized any of the workarounds that I've talked about? And do you think games should go back to including more local area area functionality so that you can at least play multiplayer titles with people that are close to you. Either way, let me know what you think down below, and as always, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, and until next time, love you guys, safe travels.